Good evening. Welcome to another edition of Focus with Tim Thomas. We're glad you have joined us for this very special edition of our program. We're coming to you from downtown Madisonville at City Hall, and we are in the beautiful Mayor's Conference Room. And we are in the Mayor's Conference Room because we have a very, very special guest that is with us this evening. And we encourage you to call someone and let them know that Focus is on the air. We have none other but than the Honorable Representative Melinda Gibbons Prunty. I did good, right?
You did good.
She is our guest. Welcome to Focus.
Thank you. Thank you for inviting me.
We're certainly glad that you're here, and we're glad to have this opportunity to just sit and dialogue and talk about what is taking place, not only with you, but in the state legislature, and just to kind of bring us up to date on some of the important things that's going on. I do know that you have been very, very busy since the beginning of you taking office. So first, but tell us a little bit about yourself and what led you into the realm of politics.
Well, I was raised in Ashland, Kentucky. I graduated from Paul Blazer High School and went to the University of Kentucky and got my Bachelor of Health Science and Physical Therapy. Met and married my husband, who was in medical school, and we moved to Georgia for 3 years for his family practice residency program. And Greenville, Muhlenberg Community Hospital, offered him the opportunity to practice medicine the way he wanted to practice. So we moved to Greenville in 1984, raised our 3 daughters there. I worked home health physical therapy for 10 years in Muhlenberg County, and went into homes doing pediatrics, a lot of pediatrics. That kind of opened my eyes to the fact that we're handing out fish, we're not teaching people how to fish. That was one life experience. Not thinking I'd run, be in politics, but just kind of opened my eyes to some realities that I wasn't aware of. Then I felt like God called me to be the director of youth ministry for the Diocese of Owensboro, which I did for 10 years. I mean, for almost 20 years, excuse me.
Wow.
I told the director of home health, I said it may be 5 or 6 years, it may be 1 or 2, it may be forever, and it ended up being almost 20, which I retired from last June, the end of last June, 2016. What led me into running for office, my husband had actually run twice. The first time, about 21 years ago, I was like, politics gross yuck, I don't want you to be a part of it. But I heard the former Lieutenant Governor Stephen Pence speak. He was the successful prosecutor of the Bobtrot scandal. He spoke and he said, politics is the art of governance. You got to have it. The kind of people you elect is the kind of government you're going to have. And I thought, okay, that made sense to me. And he'd done his homework, because I'm like, how can he speak for he doesn't know you? And he'd done his homework and said that my husband was somebody he could support, and I thought, okay. The second time he ran, about 5 years ago, I went with him. And I realized there's a lot of good people out there with similar values who want similar things. And so after he ran that time, our current senator, Senator Embry, was running for Jerry Rhodes' vacated Senate seat, and he approached us about helping him, and we said we didn't know if we could help or not, but we'd call together the people that had helped him, and there was energy in the room. We kind of got the party going again, started working the polls, because for me it was like, what are we leaving our kids and grandkids morally and fiscally? And so there was a young man, kind of serendipitously, there was a young man who wanted to be chair, and I said, I'll be treasurer, secretary, I don't care. Well, they wanted somebody, grandma with a little life experience, standing behind the young man as chair, so I was vice chair. Well, I didn't know it, but if you're chair or vice chair, you're automatically on a congressional district committee and a state committee. So I went to some state things, and I told Spencer, the young man, I said, I don't think they're all bad people. I'm still skeptical, right? But anyway, in the midst of all of this, in the midst of being director of youth ministry for the diocese, backing up just a little bit, I started going to Frankfurt. We were encouraged to go, to be a part of have our voices heard in the public square, get educated on moral and social justice issues, talk to our legislators about those issues, how were they going to vote on them. When that process, which was, again, about 18 years ago, I became aware of the ultrasound bill, and realized it had languished for over 20 years. And it had been not allowed to be heard in committee, it had not been allowed out for a vote. And so after the governor's election in 2016, 2 days after, we had our Pathway of Hope dinner. Our Pregnancy Crisis Center in Muhlenberg County had its annual fundraiser. And I had invited Senator Embry and his wife to be at our table. And Gianna Jessen was the keynote speaker.
Yes.
Well, I knew her story, and as a former physical therapist who treated kids with cerebral palsy, there was a soft spot in my heart already. But for those who don't know, Gianna Jessen is an abortion survivor. She's 38 years old, maybe 39 or 40 now, but she lives in Nashville, Tennessee. She's a Christian singer and speaker. Her mother tried to abort her with saline abortion, and she survived and has cerebral palsy as a result. And that night she was talking, and she said, I had the good fortune of being born at 7 in the morning. The doctor wasn't there yet. If he'd have been there, he'd have choked me. And she said, President Bush got the Born Alive bill passed, and she said, our current president's trying to get rid of that law. And she kept speaking, and she said, people, we need to stand up. And as hard as it was for her to stand, and just knowing that and realizing that bill had languished for so long, and people could have done something about it if they really wanted to. I just looked up and I said, are you asking me to run? And so I prayed and discerned from November to the end of January as to whether to run or not. Talked to my family, talked to my pastor, talked to Senator Embry. And in the middle of that, our youngest daughter and her husband successfully adopted a pair of twins that were born in northern Kentucky. They were born January 7th.
Wow.
And so anyway, finally decided to run, got my papers filed at the last minute, and ran. Retired, campaigned full-time, won, and then I was installed January 3rd. And as I told you, mentioned to you, it was like Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. We were installed on the 3rd, and the next day we were escorted to the chamber, up the back stairs with security because the Capitol was full of protesters. I thought, this is the real deal. Got behind, I don't know.
And when you talk about that, really, you talk about your going as a representative for the first time. I'm sure that had an impact on you.
Oh, absolutely.
Even though you'd been there several times.
Right.
The impact of being there on the floor.
Right.
Had to be...
it's all very humbling.
Yes.
Very humbling. My family was there. My mom and dad, my 88-year-old parents were on the House floor. And
I know they were so proud.
Yes. And this is kind of where I come from. What you see is what you get. Some of them were like, well, we've been here 30 years. And my mom's like, it's time for you to go home. And they're looking around like, I hear you. so that's kind of, where I come from. But some people here in Hopkins County may remember John Blanton. He was over Kentucky State Police over the post here. Well, he's retired, and I got behind him that day going up to the back steps. He said, I'm packing. I said, I'm sticking close to you. But anyway, there's good people in the freshman class that give me hope. They ran for similar reasons, really wanting to make a difference. And so anyway, that's kind of where I am.
And here we are today. Yeah. We look at some of the bills that you have sponsored and ushered through. Let's talk about the pro-life legislation, and then with the physical therapy bill. Yes.
The pro-life legislation, I have to kind of tell you a little bit of a side on those. I got to vote for the ultrasound bill. What kind of motivated me to run was my very first vote, which was and it was passed 90 to 10 or something like that, which was very full bipartisan. It should have been out a long time ago. And then the twins turned 1 on Saturday, the 7th, and they told us to be prepared to stay. And I was sitting on the House floor when their birthday party started.
Wow.
But I was voting for the 20-week pain bill, which was the pro-life bill that came from the Senate. That after there's scientific research that a fetus can feel pain, and it bans abortions after 20 weeks now. And so tears started rolling down my cheek. I thought, my first big sacrifice, but our daughter said, Mom, you're voting pro-life, it's okay. So that was kind of a neat personal thing that was attached to that issue. So, physical therapy bill, shortly after I was elected, Mike Muscarella from Paducah had called me and asked me if I would carry that bill.
Yeah.
It's a physical therapy compact bill. What it allows for is reciprocity across state lines for licensing and for accountability. It gives greater access to patients to physical therapy care for those states that are in the compact. And they had to have, it's new across the United States. We were number 8 out of 10. They had to have 10 to make it a compact. And I thought it was very important for the Kentucky State Board of Physical Therapy to be a part of the compact to make the regulating rules of the compact for the United States. Because as a therapist, I had the accountability piece of physical therapy worked through the board. I had turned someone in that I became aware of that wasn't practicing according to the ethics and principles that we were taught in school, and the process worked. They were investigated, they were given an opportunity to get their act together, and when they chose not to do that, their license was pulled. And so I felt like, and there's a layperson on the board to represent the patient, so it's not just about self-serving.
Sure.
There's a checks and balance built in the board, and I just felt like it was important for the KPTA to be a part of that process. So that was one that went on consent in the House. Then I got to learn how to whip the vote count in the Senate, met a lot of senators, and feel like it was a very productive bill. I think it'll be good for all Kentuckians.
Sure. The domestic violence bill, which
House
is
Bill 309.
very important to me as well. I think that is so important issue.
Right. I had been asked to carry that bill. It had already been presented 2 years in a row. This was the third year it was presented. I reached out and got bipartisan support, and it actually went through it was supposed to go through the House on consent and got pulled, but it made its way through and got to the Senate, and then it was considered a clean bill. But let me tell you the essence of that bill. The essence of House Bill 309 is that if someone has been a victim of domestic violence, they've been to court twice and had a DVO, they can, with 30 days written notice, get out of their lease with their landlord. And they can also change the locks on their apartments or their dwellings after they've spoken to their landlord. That was the essence of the bill. And a young lady walked with me after I presented in committee. She said if this law had been in place when I was attacked the first time, it might have prevented a second attack. And so I said, so you're saying this will make a difference? And she said, absolutely. And then when it got to the Senate, it was considered a clean bill. Senator Alvarado wanted to attach another domestic violence bill that he didn't think was going to get through the Senate. Whenever someone shares with a professional that they think that they are being abused by law, those professionals have to call Frankfurt. It's by law. And I've had to do it. As the director of youth ministry, I had to call. And they send a social worker to do a questionnaire of the person, investigate, or interview the person. What Senator Alvarado wanted to do was there are 15 domestic violence shelters that have been set up all over the state. Ours is Sanctuary. It's in Hopkinsville, and it covers 9 counties, Hopkins County being one of them. That instead of a mandatory report to the cabinet in Frankfurt where it could get lost, it's a mandatory referral to the local domestic violence shelter, so that then they can interview, build a relationship, and hopefully let them know that if there is a crisis, they have a place to go, and then hopefully maybe eventually get to prosecution. But it just made sense to me, and so I know there's, it was interesting that the person who co-sponsored the bill actually stood up and was like, well, you got to be careful when they tack a bill, and I get that because sometimes they're totally unrelated.
Sure.
But he had asked me, I had given permission, I'd sat with him, and it made sense to me. And so that bill did go through, and the Kentucky Coalition Against Domestic Violence is very, very thrilled with that. So
that is good because we're seeing more and more of that here in the Commonwealth.
Especially with the drug epidemic.
Absolutely, absolutely. So I think that's probably one of the major feathers in your cap, if you will, because very important too. And you have it on both sides.
Right.
Women and men.
Exactly.
A lot of people don't believe that, but it's true.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I believe it. Yes.
Yeah, so important. And
if anybody hasn't ever toured Sanctuary, I went and toured after I got back from session in Hopkinsville. Marion Brown's the director. It's an excellent facility.
It really
good
is.
People. They have lots
and
of resources.
Kudos to those people that, because actually it's a ministry. That's what I was going to say. Yeah.
And they care about the children. They have things for the children, and it's an excellent facility.
Right. When we talk about the right to try and the first responders toward autism.
The right to try was a bill that Senator Embry introduced in the Senate. He asked me to carry it in the House. Right to try, if a patient has been diagnosed as terminally ill and they have exhausted all forms of treatment, then they have a right to try. Whenever a treatment is federally approved, it has to have passed 3 trials. the Right to Try bill, if they've been deemed terminally ill and they've exhausted all other forms of treatment, they can try something that has passed one federal trial, because it takes 2 to 20 years to get all 3 trials done. And if somebody's diagnosed terminally ill, they may not have that much time to get treatment. So it gives them hope. And I was proud to carry that for Senator Embry on the House floor, and it did pass. And I give credit to a young man in our county, in Muhlenberg County, who took that to Senator Embry last year, and it didn't go through last year, but Senator Embry reintroduced it. And I really try to encourage young people to get involved in the process, because their voice can make a difference.
Right. You've been known since being in the House of Representatives as one who can work across the aisle, which I think is so important.
Absolutely.
In the climate that we live in now.
Right.
Especially if you want to get something done.
Right.
Tell us how that has been since being in
Well,
office.
interestingly enough, the first week I was there, a couple of folks had kind of yammered all week, and I turned around and I was like, I don't see the difference in this choice and this choice, and they didn't disagree with me. And I said, then why all the stuff?
Yeah.
And they said, because we can. And I said, and that's what the people are sick and tired of. And I thought, oh, I ain't gonna make no friends here. But interestingly enough, that woman was the woman who co-sponsored this bill.
Wow.
And I think they've both been there, and they probably didn't think anything about it, but I'm sitting here thinking, I probably ticked them off, you know? But God has given me opportunities to work with them. Like the gentleman he asked me, can I co-sponsor your PT bill? He has a daughter in physical therapy. So the things that we can truly work together on and reach across the aisle for, I mean, I'm all for it. And one of the things that I'm very involved in that's happening, true bipartisanship is happening, is the adoption work group, the House Adoption and Foster Care Work Group. Speaker Hoover asked me to be on that, and I was proud to say yes. As I said, our daughter has an adopted pair of twins. It's near and dear to my heart. They had a failed adoption and then the successful adoption, and our daughter has both a bachelor's and master's in social work, so she could see it from all around. And she's, you know, I have a lot of feedback from her. But I could fill a room with people in this district, in Hopkins County and Muhlenberg County, all over District 15. I've told Josh Nacy, he's the attorney that's organizing the work of the group, I said, I could fill a room if you want to come down and talk to them, people who have stories. And so we're listening, that work group, we're listening. We've heard from family court judges, we've heard from attorneys, we've heard from private agencies, we've heard from the cabinet. I hope we hear from the First Lady's Youth Council, who some of those kids have lived it. And I'm hoping to hear from social workers. I've been reaching out to social workers in this district, this western end of the state, and they're so excited to have a voice in the process. Trying to get them in front of the work group to get their voices heard, some best practices in that world. But we've been charged to have a piece of legislation ready to go in December to be introduced in January for the House. But I'd like to go back to the autism. You mentioned it. I didn't get to. I had a constituent who approached me who has a grandson with autism, and she was concerned because she feels like first responders in an emergency crisis situation, if they encounter someone with autism, they may not be able to recognize it, and they may not know how to deal with it. And so she wanted to make sure that they get training. And so what I did initially was introduce a bill to require first responders to have 1.5 hours training every 5 years, just basically to increase awareness and hopefully give them some practical tips on how to interact. Well, some of the professional educators, continuing educators for those different EMS groups came to me and said, sometimes we have trouble retaining workers in those fields, and rather than mandate it, they were concerned about the mandate. And I said, well, I'm not here, I don't want to cause people, I'm not here to burden people, I'm here to help people. And so I was going to withdraw it, and they said a resolution would be good because it would give them some weight to encourage people to get the training. And Senator Embry did the same thing in the Senate. And so it did. The resolution was voted on and passed, and I've continued to meet with those folks, those continuing educators. One gentleman is coordinating the work of that effort through the U of L Center for Autism, and he's asked her, the director, to put together an 1.5-hour training that can be accessed from a state platform, so there'd be no cost to anybody, and a worker could access it from home and get that training from home. So, and then it would prove that they'd done it. There'd be a way to prove that they had done it and get credit for it. So I've got to finish that up. I'm not through with it, but I'm trying to go around while I'm home in the interim. I have copies of the resolution, and once we get the training ready to launch, I want to go around to all the as many as I can, if not all of the fire departments in the emergency rooms and so forth, and give them a copy of it and encourage them to get that training. So.
That would be great. And you mentioned at the very first of the program, we're going to be running out of time, but you talked about your faith. Both being people, you and I both being people of faith. I don't think it's by accident that you're where you are. The Lord works that way.
Right.
And to be realistic about it, that's kind of His job to
Amen.
do. And He places us in certain positions to carry on His ministry of sorts.
Right. Right.
So I think that's where we are with that.
Well, and I feel like He called. I'm willing to stay as long as He wants me and the people want me. I know in this job you can't make everybody happy. I try to educate myself on both sides of issues, pray, and and vote what I think's right, and let the rest go, because ultimately I got to answer to Him. So
that's right. Who is the final judge?
Amen.
That's right.
Amen.
That's right. You serve on several committees. We want to run down those. Health and Family Service. You serve as vice chair. Education, small business,
and IT.
Medicaid oversight and advisory.
Right. That's going to be huge.
Very huge. Very huge.
And see, because of my experience in home health and being in those homes, there has to be some accountability in that system. There has to be, to me, I saw many people who were working, paying taxes for people to get free. There was a disparity there, and somehow we've got to integrate those systems, and make it fair for everybody. But I feel like it's going to be huge. We don't know what's going to happen in Washington. We're hoping that we get the freedom in Kentucky to make it work for us, make it local and make it work for us. So that's going to be huge.
It's going to be very huge. It's going to be very huge. And then we talk about Budget Review Committee for Education and Workforce Development.
Now, Hal Hunter is over that cabinet.
Yes.
And I asked him when he came to give us a report, and while we were in session, I said, "Are you working with the Office of Social Insurance?" They have to interface, and so I'm just trying to challenge.
Well,
you can't operate in silos,
Right. They have to interface if they're going to be productive.
Right.
In the right way.
Right. For everybody.
Correct. For everybody.
Exactly. Because I feel like there's a dignity in work.
Yes.
And if we can figure out what everyone's God-given talent is, what their passion is, and encourage them and empower them to do that, then we've, it's going to be the best thing for the economy.
Absolutely.
So.
Absolutely. Speaker Hoover has asked you to serve on the House Adoption and Foster Care Group.
I spoke about that earlier.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is that not wild? I mean, you know what I'm saying?
Well,
I mean, when you think of your daughter and it's taking place.
Yes, and Chairman Meade and Chairman Joni Jenkins, co-chair, Chairman Meade has an adopted child. There are many people on that work group that have personal experience. But yes, I was humbled to be asked to serve, but absolutely thrilled, because adoption law reform was one of my platforms when I ran, and I heard lots of stories when I was running about people's stories. So
right.
Yes.
And to our listening audience that may be listening to us, adoption is very important. We want to encourage people in our listening audience, if you have thought about it, to act upon that.
Right, right.
You can be such a blessing.
Right. Well, and there's so many children in the system now, particularly as you said before, with the drug crisis and everything. The numbers are going up, and children of all ages and special needs all need to be adopted. So, and the governor's put a lot of emphasis on that. He has a new czar in charge of that, so it's all branches working together. He's been an example himself of adopting children, and there are so many people in Kentucky, though, that are adopting from outside Kentucky because our laws are so things are not streamlined. There's too many forms, too many home studies that don't jive. It needs to be made uniform and easier and less expensive for people who are trying to adopt.
Absolutely.
So.
Some of the issues that still pending that we're looking at, we're talking about state pension,
right,
and tax reform.
Right. We're supposed to be looking at a special session. We're here in September, but we haven't heard anything definite. The governor is waiting on an independent study, the third part of a three-part study on pension reform and a three-part study on tax reform. He wants to keep promises made. I am aware that some promises were made retroactive and no money put in. I think all of that has to be looked at. I try to tell people I didn't create the problem. I'm willing to try to be part of the solution. I've got to look at the facts. And again, there may have to be some give and take on both sides. I've got lots of state workers, sheriffs, deputies, firefighters, jailers, teachers. Everybody's asking me about it. They're all concerned, and I get that. But I also have taxpayers who say, don't put that burden on my kids. So it's like, how do we figure that out? How do we figure that out? And because it's been going on for a long time. And we passed legislation this session that lifted the veil on the transparency. It went from a figure of 34 billion to it could be as high as 85 billion. So it's huge.
Very huge.
Depending on how you look at it. So we just gotta, again,
jobs. When we talk about jobs, that's bold legislation.
Right. And that's bearing fruit. We did pass bold legislation, and you've got Brady Industries announcing to come in South Shore, Kentucky. I texted Representative Bentley. I said, we got places down here in 15th District waiting for jobs if they have a sister company that wants to come this way. Amazon's in Northern Kentucky. Toyota's expanding. Jobs are expanding in Henderson, and the I-69 corridor. I was up there for a ceremonial bill signing a few weeks ago, and the county judge executive, I said, we need some jobs on our end of the corridor, and he said, they're coming. So I don't know if he knows something we don't know, but I'm like, I think we've taken the steps to make it happen.
I-69 is going to be, it's going to be very important, and very productive, I think, for our district as time goes by.
And they're working on the bridge. They're trying to get the bridge built, and they're trying to figure out where they're going to place it, and who it's going to affect, and minimal effect on environment and farm and all that. But they're trying to figure out right now where the bridge is going to go. So, and I encourage folks to go up and be a part of that if they're. since they're so close here to Henderson, that's where at the community college is where they have those open meetings if they want to go here and see what's going on.
Sure. Representative, we're coming to a close. We've covered a lot of territory, and I've invited you to come back and update us and update our listening audience on what is taking place.
Be glad to.
With the state legislature. Anything you'd like to leave our listening audience?
Just appreciate your prayers, your support. If you have anything that you want to bring to me, my email address is Melinda, Melinda.Prunty, Prunty @lrc.ky.gov, and reach me at any time there, and be glad to respond. I get inundated with emails and phone calls, but I respond as quickly as I can, and I keep trying. If I don't respond, it's not because I'm trying to ignore. So just appreciate your continued support.
Well, we appreciate you and appreciate your spirit. You have such a humble spirit, and we appreciate you and all you're doing.
Thank you.
For not only our district, but for the people of the Commonwealth. And it's always been said, only what you do for Christ is going to count in the end. So all of this is part of that, and we appreciate what you do. We've been talking to the Honorable Representative Melinda Gibbons Prunty.
Very good. I'm impressed.
I am so impressed myself. She's been joining us for Focus, and we're glad that you have tuned in. We're going to put all of her information on the screen, and probably has already popped up. So we encourage you to get in touch if you'd like to just something you have an issue you would like for her to know about. Please get in contact with her. And let me say I appreciate your staff as well, those that kind of handle everything for you. They're very prompt, and I think that speaks well.
Thank you.
So we appreciate that as well. We hope you'll tune in to another edition of our program. We've been coming to you again from the beautiful conference room downtown Madisonville in City Hall, the Mayor's Conference Room. And so we hope you'll tune in to another edition of Focus. I'm Tim Thomas, and by all means, keep sharing the dream.